Right. Excuse me. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Thank you again for joining us for today's technical webinar series, How to Make Your Airport Stand Out. Just really quickly, I'm Natalie Niskanen with AirTAP, Program Coordinator. We help Minnesota's public and private sector airport professionals improve the safety, quality, and efficiency of airport operations and increase the use of new navigation materials, practices, and technology. Our training events include the annual Minnesota Airports Conference, annual webinar series such as this one, and an annual wildlife hazard control workshop, which is open for registration if you haven't seen that yet. And we also have electronic and print newsletters covering airport management and related content relevant to all Minnesota airports, large and small. So like I said, this is part of the technical webinar series. We do have at least one more webinar coming out later this spring after the airports conference on UAS. So keep an eye on your inbox for that announcement. Oops, I just scrolled way too fast. And then just a quick plug here for the airports conference. I know I'll see several of you there. If you're not registered, we welcome you to register today, and we hope to see you there. We're excited for the opportunity to learn this year from several airport managers and having more of a panel style discussion for many of our sessions versus just sitting through endless PowerPoints. So we welcome you to come and join us with our discussions. And then some quick housekeeping items here. We're going to be sending out a post-webinar survey to get your feedback from today's webinar. We really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and also letting us know other topics you'd be interested in learning about. And then as far as questions, we'll have the questions and Q&A after the presentation today, and you can put your questions in the chat, or if you put them in the Q&A, that's fine too. But if you put them in the chat, it's always nice to have other people reply to you if you have more of an interactive question. Maybe somebody else in the audience can get a discussion going. And with that, I'm going to hand everything over to Kreg Anderson, today's presenter, who is the manager at Alexandria Regional Airport. Kreg, you can take it away.
Thank you. I will share my screen here. Let's see. Hold on a second. All right. All right. Like Natalie said, my name is Kreg Anderson. I'm the airport manager up in Alexandria. And a little bit about myself. I'm an Alexandria native. Went to let's see. Went to the University of North Dakota, graduated in 2016 with an aviation management degree. And I've been involved with Alexandria Aviation dating back to high school. Most recently, I was brought on as airport manager in 2018. And in addition to that, I am a professional pilot. I've done charter flying in the past through Alec Aviation. I've done a lot of flight instructing over the years. Ferry flying, I've seen quite a bit of the country, picking airplanes up and dropping them off for people that bought and sold airplanes. We do scenic rides out of Alexandria as well, so giving rides to tourists and locals. And my most recent endeavor is flying with NetJets, one of the world's or country's largest fractional jet ownership companies from 2023 to the present. Um, and I tallied it up for this presentation, and I'm a little over 680 airports that I've been to in the country, out of I think approximately 5,000 airports we have in the United States. A little bit about today's presentation. I should go back to that main slide. Like I said, making your airport stand out is the name of today's presentation. And the thing I want you to keep in mind is the little things go a long way. And that's kind of the theme for today's presentation. Today's topics, how are we going to make your airport stand out to users and visitors? We'll focus on the four areas here: your facilities, operations, local amenities, and marketing. Most of this applies to general aviation, particularly FBOs and unattended airports, which make up a majority of our state. I might use AD building and FBO interchangeably. Just know that I'm referring to the arrival departure building if I slip up and use the term FBO. My goal today is to give you guys some achievable and cost-effective options for airports of all sizes. We can't all build a brand new AD building, LEED certified, beautiful windows, or have an Audi courtesy car sitting in the parking lot. So, what are some things we can do kind of around the edges to help bolster arrival departure building and other facets of our airport to make it more friendly and, um, let people leaving, walking, flying away with a great experience at our airport. My first slide here, I just had to throw this one in here. This is the FBO in Palm Springs, California. And yes, that is a hot tub and a pool in the front entrance of their FBO. So I really wish I had a hot tub and pool in the front entrance of our FBO, but I think our productivity levels would go down significantly if that was the case. Um, Arrival departure building. Something to consider is your arrival departure building is often the first taste or the very first impression that visitors get of your entire community. When they fly into the airport, the first thing they're going to do is not only go into your arrival departure building, but can you guess which room in that AD building they're going to use? And if you're thinking bathroom, you are correct. I actually have a photo on here of Anoka's bathroom. I'm in love with that sink. It blows my mind every time I use it. It looks like it's completely flat surface until you start washing your hands, and somehow the water just magically goes back into the drain in the back. Um, so again, when those people are walking into your arrival departure building, what are they greeted with? Especially in the bathroom. Do you have amenities for them? Floss, mouthwash, extra shaving supplies, toothpaste, etc. Something I try to keep in mind, and we do here in Alexandria, is considering your five senses. I know if we break that down to the five senses, thinking about vision. When you walk into your FBO, is it dimly lit or is it bright? A bright building, plenty of, either lights or natural light usually gives an appearance of a welcoming, friendly facility. If it's dimly light, maybe you got lights flickering, portions of your building are turned off or the lights are turned off. It doesn't create the most inviting atmosphere. Um, Windows, again, we can't all rebuild our AD building, but windows providing natural sunlight um, is always a nice touch. And then general cleanliness. Areas where people can sit and lounge. Oftentimes we have magazines. Are they orderly or are they just kind of strewn about? Are they from 2026 or are they from 2004? Just keeping them up to date, making sure they're orderly. Carpets and flooring as well. Again, just the little things like cleaning them. Is there, especially this time of year, is there mud being tracked in? Is there loose dirt, grass everywhere in the FBO, or has it been vacuumed recently? And the story I'll share on this for your cleanliness is when I was flying charter for Alec Aviation. We went to an airport out west, a western state. That was a pretty popular area for hunting. There are some pretty notable hunting resorts in that area where they provided like a full chauffeur service. You fly in, the hunting guide will come pick you up at the airport. So after a few hour flight, we landed. Like I said, first thing we got to do, all of us passengers and myself, is use the bathroom. It's an unattended airport, uncontrolled, unattended. We walk in the AD building, and there are dead bugs everywhere on the floor. I'm talking, you can't take a step anywhere without crunching on dead bugs. Flies, box elder bugs, you name it. Not only that, but as I recall, I don't think there is any toilet paper, or not toilet paper, paper towels stocked in the bathroom. And I don't recall the soap situation either. But again, think about that first impression. Those people were spending quite a bit of money in that community, and their first impression of it was dead bugs in the airport AD building. So even for an uncontrolled airport or an unattended airport, check on it. Make sure that, especially as seasons change, that there's no surprises in there that a visitor might find before you do. Going back to our vision, the other thing to talk about is furniture. When you walk into your AD building, does it feel like you walked back into 1972? Again, the expectation is not to have brand new furniture, modern furniture everywhere, but is there anything we can do to make it look a little more um, appealing than, again, furniture with that floral print from the 1970s? And not only that, but furniture from that time frame might not be the most cleanly either when we talk about touch here in a second. Who knows what it might be hiding? I know one secret I've done before. Um, we have a Habitat for Humanity in town. They have a restore. Sometimes you can find some pretty decent looking furniture at the restore that people are upgrading their houses and just want to get rid of the furniture and bring it there. So every once in a while, there's some used furniture spots. Again, whether it's like a restore or a wholesaler warehouse. I know in Alexandria we have a few of those as well. You can find good deals on furniture. So again, just a food for thought to kind of make some around the edges updates as you're able to. Moving into the touch. I think we could all agree it's important to feel clean. Um, Whether it's a personal or professional thing, I don't think if we feel clean, we're going to do as well uh, in our occupation or just as we're traveling around. Do you have hand sanitizer or some type of wipes available to people at your facility? This was a really big deal when COVID first hit, and I don't think you walk in anywhere without, being given hand sanitizer or sanitizing wipes. But I think it's an important thing that came out of COVID that, maybe we should continue to do that. So again, not just having soap in the bathroom, but do you have some other spots around where you just have hand sanitizer sitting on a counter? And related to that, think about what your users might encounter as far as getting their hands dirty, whether it's the pilots who have to deal with fuel, 100 low lead or jet fuel is both stinky. 100 low lead really dries out your hands, so maybe having lotion available in your AD building. Oil is always greasy and hard to get off. Hydraulic fluid is the same. Even your customers are the people flying in with their bags. We live in Minnesota. We have salt that we often use for our sidewalks. But have you ever like drug a bag like at the Minneapolis airport or something like that, and then you've picked it up, and that salt doesn't have a great smell to it when you put it down on the conveyor belt or pick it up from the baggage claim afterwards. Um, so again, that's something to think about as well, is maybe having some type of wipes that people can use. Bathroom features take care of a lot of this. I highly recommend that you have your bathroom stocked with, again, the sanitizing wipes, mouthwash, things like extra toothpaste or toothbrush if someone realizes that, oh shoot, I forgot to pack this on your trip, which I'm sure we've all done, forgot to pack contact solution or toothpaste or something. Having a little travel size one in your AD building is just a little touch that can go a long way when a person needs it. Moving on to taste. Oftentimes, if someone's traveling through your airport, think of like a fuel stop. Not only do they need fuel for the airplane, but they need a little energy boost for themselves. Maybe they got done with a 3 hour flight and they got another 3 hour leg to go down to Chicago or something. Something as simple as, mints or other courtesy candies available at the front desk or maybe by your weather computer is a good little touch. But going above and beyond that, maybe you're able to offer some type of snacks and drinks. Vending machines aren't always realistic. I know oftentimes vending companies want to see a return on investment for putting them there. But maybe you have a basket where you can run the Walmart and get some candy bars and then have a small fridge. That you can offer drinks as well, whether it's you have listed pricing or free will donation. Again, just something to consider for the people traveling through. And if you want to get really specific about it, personal experience, I'd recommend bottles over cans. I will admit that we have cans in Alexandria. They're a little cheaper, but it's a lot easier to screw a bottle back on. When you're in turbulence, you can't really do much with a can at 3,000 feet when you're bopping through turbulence. So, um, something to consider. And as far as a local touch, maybe there's locally sourced products you could offer. I think there's a couple of North Dakotans in the presentation today. Great examples in North Dakota, giant sunflower seeds, Dots pretzels, little giveaway bags of those are a great local touch. In Minnesota, the one that comes to mind for me is Pearson salt and nut rolls. Having those available, and maybe you can have a little thing there for visitors explaining the significance of why you have that there. Again, to give it that local touch. Moving on to scent. Have you ever thought about what your AD building smells like? When you walk in from outside, what does it smell like? Does it smell old? I'm sure you guys have something you think about. You've heard of it before, like it just smells old, right? Um, could it be musty from furniture, humidity in the summer? How can we make it smell fresh? I think the most logical thing would be doing regular cleaning if we're able to, whether it's having a contracted service, city staff member going out there periodically. Otherwise, air fresheners will do a heavy lifting for you. And I kid you not, some of the major FBOs across the country are experimenting with specifically scented air fresheners that are the exact same in every facility. So every time you walk into one of their FBOs, you have the same scent. So they tie or correlate that scent to their facility. Um, I ran into places across the country that are trying to do that with the smell of fresh baked cookies. So every time you walk into one of their branded facilities, it smells like fresh baked cookies. You'd see that in other industries as well. I've noticed it with banks specifically in my area. Or better yet, make some real food. If you have an attended airport, maybe you can make some fresh baked cookies, or maybe you can make some fresh popcorn, fresh coffee every morning. Again, those little things go a long way. Just what's that first impression when you're walking into the building? Not just what you're seeing, but what you're hearing, what you're smelling, etc. And moving on to that last one with the hearing, what's ideal in an AD building? I would argue that it's probably a quiet space when people are waiting around, whether waiting for a flight after just getting in. They probably want a quiet space to relax, catch up on phone calls, catch up on emails. At times, you have soft music playing in the background in FBOs. I would be very cognizant of any TVs you have playing. Um, you don't want them blaring. I've been to places where you have some news station just blaring, um, and you can't get it out of your head as you're sitting there trying to catch up on emails. Repeated PA systems, more so for commercial service airports, but how often are those repeated PA system automated messages sounding? Is the voice on there friendly, or is it get annoying after hearing it for 30 minutes in a row? And then with the cleanliness as well, when you go to clean your facility, when are you cleaning it? If you had pilots come in at 7 a.m. For an early morning business meeting, or maybe they're doing a medical flight and they're catching up in the pilot lounge, you probably don't want to vacuum at 10 a.m. as they're trying to catch up on sleep a little bit or just relaxing for their next leg of their flight. So again, just consider when it comes to some of the more loud things with the cleaning, taking out garbages, vacuuming, etc. Just be cognizant of those visitors in your lobby. Moving on to decorations, I think we could all agree that airplane decorations are an easy choice, right? It's hard to miss on that. Whether it's modern or historic, they're both great. I will say though that with the historic photos, don't let them look outdated. Consider upgrading the frames, getting simple modern frames from Walmart or Target for the photos, maybe reprinting off faded photos. Same with newspaper clippings. If you have old newspaper clippings that are really faded and yellow, maybe your local historical society can get you some reprints of those, so they look a little better than that yellow tinge on them. Leaning into your town's culture or history is, fantastic idea as well. Whether it's through some local art, through photos, any of that's fantastic. One of the most unique ones I've ran across was in a small town, probably about the size of Alexandria, in Goldsboro, North Carolina. They had an AD building, similar to a lot of our own AD buildings regarding size, and they had a TV for viewing in their little lobby area. And then on all the shelving around it, instead of photos, they had examples of all the products made in their community with their local industries, whether they were real examples or they were scaled down. We were in North Carolina, so they had, tobacco on display, little cigarettes. They had some textiles. I think they canned soup in that town, if I remember right. So they had some examples of the soup they canned. They had some scaled down machinery that was produced, kind of, basically like a toy-sized machinery of the real thing that was produced in that community. So I thought that was a really cool idea that I could just look at these things and instantly understand, the value of this community and what was important to them with their industries. Another example, as you see in the photo, this is in Pinehurst, North Carolina. Two North Carolina examples. If any of you are golfers on this call, you probably are familiar with Pinehurst. It's a pretty popular golfing town. Um, but they had an island for their driveway. And instead of just having an island with overgrown grass and shrubs, they partnered with one of their golfing associations and turned it into a putting green. So if people are waiting around for their flight, if pilots are waiting for their passengers to come back, etc., they can grab some putters from the FBO there and go practice their putting. I thought that was a super unique idea. Not every airport has the ability or has an island, but maybe there is a little spot near FBO that you could turn into a putting green, a little playground, something like that. Moving into accessibility, I think the big thing in Minnesota is the 24/7 access, especially for heated facilities. Being in Minnesota, we know heat's a must in the state. But 24/7, you really want to have a heated facility and then have some form of a bathroom available. I was actually giving this presentation to my girlfriend last night. Both her dad and brother fly their private pilots, and The scenario she had, she wanted me to add in was consistency of the door codes. So most of us have some type of door code to get into our FBO. First off, if you have dual doors, you have entry doors leading to the outside and then a little entry area, then another set of doors. Put that door lock on the inner set of doors so you can at least stand outside of the elements as you try to figure out your door code. But again, have some type of consistency or some type of, good hint about what your door code is. The last three digits of the AWAS, the Unicom frequency without the decimal, something like that. My girlfriend's example was she remembered when she was younger, she had to use the bathroom. Her dad landed at an airport. It was winter. She was shivering, whining about trying to use her bathroom, and her dad was trying to punch in these random door codes because there's no good hints, like his life depended on it to make sure his daughter could use the bathroom. So, something to think about is again, not, when people need those door codes, it's often dark, it's often cold. It might be after a long day, and they're not working at full capacity. So keeping it consistent and keeping it simple. But again, we want something that only a pilot would know. So some of the general public that's not necessarily welcome is getting in. Another thing to consider is not only getting into your AD building, but if you arrive, say at midnight, how do you get out of the airport? For one thing, I'd recommend keeping yourself, or if you have an FBO that runs your AD building, keeping them honest about their hours. Don't close early, don't close late. Um, Make sure that you're following your published hours, making sure that you have someone answers the phone after hours. Traditionally, a lot of airports have a list saying, hey, call these people after hours. But you go to a lot of the unattended airports in the state, and I don't expect that, well, first off, if it's a city phone number, no one's answering after 5 p.m. But B, I don't expect that the city administrator, public works director, et cetera, should be putting their cell phone number out there. Um, the beauty of airports is we have a lot of passionate people around them. And maybe there's an individual at your airport, whether it's an airport commission member, a local pilot, someone else that's passionate about aviation, that's willing to kind of volunteer to that role, that they can be the after hours contact for your facility. Maybe they know how to do basic things like unlock the AD building, get fuel if the fuel pump is acting up, etc. So again, if someone arrives at your airport and needs assistance, they're met with somebody that's able to answer the phone, come and take care of their needs. And again, it's not necessarily a strain on the city itself or whoever is running the airport. My example from this, several years ago, I was coming back from Sun and Fun, the big air show in Florida. Some friends and I went down, we flew down. We're coming back and we're deciding where to stop for the night. We chose this airport, their FBO. I think it was published that they're open till 8 p.m. on a Saturday, and it was a Saturday afternoon. We arrived about 7 o'clock, maybe 7:15. This airport was about the size of St. Cloud, so a Class Delta airport. It did have a control tower. Um, Pretty quiet on a Saturday evening, but we landed, we tied the airplane down. We walked into the FBO, door was locked. There's tinted windows, so we got up in there and it was all dark inside. There's no code to get in. No big deal. No, we'll just Uber somewhere, right? And we start looking at the fence. It's an 8 to 10 foot tall fence, and there's no gate. There's no way to get out of this airport without scaling the fence. So that was the first time I have ever been trapped inside of an airport. Um, so as we kept looking around, we realized, this AD building, I'm guessing it was an older terminal building. I don't think this airport had airline service anymore. They must have used to, though, decades ago. It appeared to be like an FBO or AD building, and then maybe there's airport administrative offices and maybe a flight school that was all in the same facility. But we noticed one door that just said the word police on it, which I thought was kind of weird. Um, but we walked up to it, we kind of knocked and just opened the door a little bit. And sure enough, there's one police officer sitting at a desk. I was kind of confused because around Minnesota, we're not used to having police officers based at our airports. But sure enough, this community had a full-time airport police officer 24/7. And he was just sitting in there doing whatever work he was doing on his computer. So we asked him, hey, what's the situation here? We wanted to spend the night. The FBO is not open. And he was like, yeah, if it's slow, sometimes they leave an hour or two early on a Saturday or a Sunday. So again, I would not recommend that. But regardless, this gentleman was very nice, offered us a ride to the hotel. So I have to say it was quite the sight arriving to a Motel 6 of all places in the back of a police car. We definitely got some looks from the front counter and some other guests that were in the lobby of this motel, but it all worked out. The FBO was open the next day and they gave us a ride back to the airport. So, again, something to think about. Someone shows up in the middle of the night. It's not reasonable to expect all the time that someone might be there to assist them, but with the self-service, can they get out to get an Uber or maybe somebody's picking them up, etc. We don't want to make sure we want to make sure they're not trapped in our airport. Courtesy cars. I am a firm believer that every community or every airport must have a courtesy car. We've talked about it before at AirTAP and airport conferences that last mile connectivity is a challenge everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're Wheaton, Minnesota or Eden Prairie, Minnesota. There's challenges everywhere when it comes from getting from the airport to where you need to go in the community. Um, the smaller the community you go to, the tougher it gets. You all know that are from those places. So I am a firm believer in airport courtesy cars and their value to an airport and the community as a whole. The three things that really, you should really ask yourself with a courtesy car: is it reliable? Is it convenient? Is it accessible? Reliability, you might be able to hand them the keys and get it started, but if they're spending the night in your community and it's positive 5 degrees out, is they going to start the next morning in the hotel parking lot? Um, or I ran into situations where, hey, here's the keys to the car, but you got to do this special procedure in order to turn the battery on, and you got to wait 5 seconds before you turn the key for this to happen or this to engage. Um, the car is not designed to, with those little tricks. So let's make sure it's reliable and working like it should. Convenience, is it parked in the convenient spot? Is it convenient to find? Being we live in Minnesota, if it's able to be in a indoor facility, that's fantastic. A heated indoor facility is even better. But at the same time, that's not super convenient if we don't know how to find it as pilots. So if it's in storage unit 15A at the end of your third T hanger row, without very clear guidance, I don't know how I'm supposed to find it, especially then if I go in there and need a door code and then need to figure out how to open the garage door and then shovel the garage door in front of it because it just snowed recently. So again, is it convenient and is it accessible? That kind of ties in with that. Um, on that topic of the winter consideration, some other things to think about. If you have teenagers, you probably don't let them go out in the winter without some type of winter kit in the back of their car. Consider the same for your courtesy car. Things like an extension cord, a shovel, an ice scraper, putting it in the trunk or in the back seats just so it's there in case somebody needs it. Because that might be the difference of, again, it starting or not in the parking lot of a hotel when it's 5 degrees out. If they have the ability to plug it in with the extension cord you provided, or if there's no option to plug it in, then you're hoping and praying in the next morning. I guess then the last bullet point here is marketing opportunities. Courtesy cars have challenges with them. We know that there's costs associated. We have insurance costs. We have maintenance costs. Something to think about is wrapping your car. The simplest way is making sure that your airport name is on the side of the car, so that when it's driving around town, people can see the value of the airport. We all know that airports aren't probably the most known place in our community. But when a vehicle rolls up to someone's parking lot, whether it's a restaurant, maybe it's a sporting event, maybe it's a wedding. I've had people grab rent or courtesy cars for funerals, and it says Alexandria Municipal Airport on it. It's a reminder to other attendees at that function and or the business owners, say it's at a restaurant, um, or whatnot, that okay, we do have an airport in this town, and it's obviously bringing business to my establishment because this car is reminding me. So at a minimum, make sure that you have something on your car, letting people know that hey, this is the airport car, and the more it's seen around town, the better off you are. If you want to go a step above, you might be able to do some creative marketing opportunities. Maybe they get a little bit of income on that courtesy car. Um, some type of a wrap. Maybe there's a local business, maybe a car dealership that's willing to work with you on a discounted maintenance program or maybe discounted car in the first place. And you could trade them for a wrap on the car that says, you know, whatever airport courtesy car sponsored by the Toyota dealer or something like that. Um, And I've seen some other wraps like you see here. These are both example. I think the bottom examples from Michigan. I thought that was just very unique, where the manager, wanted to wrap it in an airplane themed style. Definitely an interesting paint scheme for a Crown Vic. The top one though is a good example of another community partnership. That's in Washington Island, Wisconsin. I don't know if there's any Wisconsinites on our phone call, but Washington Island's about a 4 square mile island in Door County, and they partnered with their local Lions group to provide this Dodge Ram van as their courtesy car. I have been there and driven that one. It's probably my favorite courtesy vehicle I've ever driven, and you stick out like a sore thumb when you're driving around in a big yellow van on a 4 mile wide island. But again, a great example of reminding people that there is an airport in this community, bringing visitors in. When we showed up to the local ice cream shop and with the Lions decals on there as well, it shows a great partnership in that organization. The other example I have, I don't have a photo of, is Gaylord, Michigan. I flew in there, and they were doing an air show that year, and they wrapped their courtesy car to promote the air show that coming year. So you kind of kill two birds with one stone. You're letting people know that yes, there's an airport in this community, and the vehicle is being driven around town and seen by residents. But also, here's a reminder that we got a big event coming up, and you know, it's some great marketing for the airport. Signage. Have you ever stopped to think if there's like basic road signs to your airport from your main thoroughfare, whether it's the interstate, a state highway, when people enter your community, oftentimes we have signs for the hospital, city hall or downtown, schools, but do you have signs up for directions to the airport? Most of us involved in the airports are somehow tied into our, local government or public works. And, usually it's pretty easy for public works to make some signs pointing to an airport where appropriate. So that might be something to do, just some basic signage. I'm thinking of those green signs that directional signs to where your airport is. Not only that, but when you arrive at the airport, do you have signs at your entrance? A lot of times airports are in kind of nondescript places, maybe near an industrial park, and the entrance isn't always obvious. So having signs at your entrance, not just saying, hey, the airport's here, but use it as an opportunity to promote your tenants. If you have a few tenants at your airport, whether it's a flight school, maintenance shop, whatever the situation may be, take that opportunity to put them on the sign too, ask for a logo of theirs, and give them a little publicity. Another thing to think about, actually, before I move on, another thing that I found all the time in Alexandria is we always have UPS drivers or medical drivers dropping off blood for our air ambulance provider that is always confused about what facility they need to go to at the airport. So we've gone a step further and not only have the logos for the entities on our entrance signs, but then we made the equivalent of street signs on all the hangars saying what tenant is in what hangar, so they can drive right up to the door of a hangar. They'll see it say, aircraft maintenance, and then they know they're at the right business, and they don't have to come into the AD building asking how to get to whether it's a maintenance shop, an avionics shop, air ambulance provider, etc. Um, Airport fencing. Most of us have some form of airport fencing, whether it's a full wildlife fence or maybe just around our front entrance area. But have you ever considered using that fencing for signage or banners? We paid for it and we might as well make our use of it. Um, Promotion of airport events, maybe directions to your airport entrance, or services offered at your airport. I can tell you we probably had signage up at our main intersection. We have two state highways that meet near the Alexandria airport, and about 15 years ago, we put up signs just saying, flight instruction available, aircraft rental available, scenic rides available, and it's amazing the amount of customers we've gained, some of which have gone all the way through and are now own multiple airplanes. They have their own private hangar on the airport simply because they recognize that sign when they're driving through the area. And the thought popped into their head, huh, maybe I should learn to fly. If nothing else, it's another reminder that yes, there is an airport in this community. And then I got a quiz at the bottom. If you're an airport manager, what do you think you would serve at the Minnesota State Fair? And if you answered an airplane on a stick, you're correct. So I think one of the most unique opportunities for making your airport stand out in terms of signage is having some type of airplane out there. Obviously, not one of the more feasible or easily accomplishable things we're talking about today, but if you're able to do it, what a fantastic way to individualize your airport and make it stand out. We have a couple examples here that are pretty well known across the state. On the left is probably the most well-known Owatonna's display with the Thunderbirds. Right on I-35, I believe. I mean, you drive on I-35, you can't miss it. What a fantastic idea. Um, and then on the right side, we got the P-51. I believe that's based off of Bob Hoover's old P-51, Old Yeller, down at the Granite Falls Airport, which falls right in line with the museum at the airport there. Another example that's pretty popular is Wilmer's F-14. If you guys didn't know, there is a full, I believe it's Navy F-14 sitting right next to the AD building in Wilmer, Minnesota. And I think that attracts a lot of military history um, folks as well that are interested more so in just seeing the airplane than necessarily the airport itself. A lot of these displays are made possible through the National Museum of the Air Force. In Alexandria, we have a T-33 that's on loan from National Museum of the Air Force. It's an indefinite loan as long as we document it each year that it's still there, it's still on its stick. We're not defacing it. We're not using it for parts. The National Museum of the Air Force is happy to continue the agreement. Oftentimes, local connections can help. I think in the case of Wilmer, there is a local resident who was an F-14 pilot and was instrumental in helping make that happen. So whether it's a local veteran or maybe an organization like the VFW, American Legion, etc., might be able to help partner and give you a really unique kind of gatekeeper of your airport, if you will. Or donated airplanes. It doesn't have to be military. Maybe somebody has an airplane that they are looking to um, retire from flying and think that they want to donate the airplane to the airport to use either as a front, again, a front gate ornament, or maybe they want to hang it from your AD building. I've seen it both ways, but again, if you're able to, not always the easiest thing to do, but what a fantastic way to individualize your airport. Moving into airport operations, we won't spend too much time on this one. But when it comes to summer operations, it probably doesn't need to be said, but consistent mowing, keeping a tidy airport. We talked about AD buildings being the first impression, and you know, a really attentive passenger or pilot will notice the grounds of your airport as well. Is it kept in an orderly condition? Is it mowed? Weed whipping is a challenge. We all know that. As much as we try to get rid of those weeds, they keep coming back. We try to get on a routinely schedule the beginning of each month. So June, July, August, September, we take a few days and kind of wage war against all the weeds. And, they'll die off. And then a few weeks later, a new group will crop up. And then it comes about time in our rotation to go do it again. Um, Even if you have things like a VOR and ILS, maybe electrical boxes that are 500 feet off and not directly next to your runway like a runway light, again, people will notice that. So making sure that those other facilities too are kept orderly. But I will say I've been to all these airports. The biggest airports in the United States also have weed problems. The taxiways in Atlanta International Airport, weeds. So again, it's a hard issue. We all know that, but it does represent your airport. Winter operations, timely snow plowing. Every community is different. Some of us have dedicated airport snow plow crews. Some of us use our city crews. But let's make sure that if we're able to, let's time the air plow the airport in a timely manner. Oftentimes, the airport occurs after a lot of the city streets, which is understandable. But let's make sure that we're doing it after those city streets and not waiting 24, 48 hours, etc., to get the airport taken care of. If that is the situation, I understand it's not always possible to do it right away, but please post NOTAMs. For those of you that are not aware of NOTAMs, maybe that's a conversation for another AirTAP topic. Um, but from my experience, about 50% of non-commercial service airports don't post NOTAMs. So they're not letting pilots know what the conditions are of their airport, if there's snow on the runway, if there's ice on the runway, are all the runway lights out, etc. And not only is that maybe a negative when it comes to customer service, and someone's trying to land at your airport and they pop out of the clouds and they have a completely snowed over runway where they can't decipher what's the snow and what's the grass next to it. but it also kind of opens us up to liability as a community where if we're not notifying someone of the conditions of our airport, they land on glare ice, skid all the way off the end of the runway, cause an accident. There is some liability on our behalf as well. So I'm a huge advocate for posting NOTAMs. Again, not everyone can be out there after the last snowflake drops to start plowing, but let's make sure that we're letting our users know accordingly. And then radios, if you do have crews out there, maybe a little um, an hour presentation about some basic radio terminology for pilots. So if someone's plowing the runway and they hear somebody call a final or a downwind, our operators know that terminology. Maybe they have a map of an airport diagram that shows what those positions mean. I mean, even with YouTube nowadays, there's so much on there about aviation training and traffic patterns, and maybe even a video focus for pilots um, could get the message across about some of the basic terminology. And then, like the picture shows here, kind of consider where your passengers walk. This is a major airport, major USA airport, that the photo that I took here, and the runways are in fantastic conditions. The taxiways are in fantastic conditions, but we got to the FBO, and this is probably 6 hours after it had snowed and it had not been touched. Again, we know that at small airports it's not always feasible, but at an international airport, you would think that they would consider that. And I don't know if it's the airport's responsibility or the tenant, like the FBO, but something to consider is if you do have a tenant responsible for plowing their leased ramp or whatnot, make sure you hold them accountable. Maybe say that after the end of each snowfall, you have within the hour to start plowing. In this scenario, granted, we were coming in empty. We didn't have any passengers, but I can tell you that the most dangerous part of a business jet for passengers is those stairs, especially the elderly. I think I've heard of a lot of incidents or accidents where people have fallen up or down the stairs and broken some bones, slipped on ice at the bottom of the stairs, etc. So considering where those passengers walk, not just at the airplanes, but then the entryways as well to your AD building. Other considerations, things like basic tie downs. If someone forgets their tie downs, have some basic ropes available that people could use. Doesn't mean or even if you have them available, maybe on a light pole or something, doesn't mean people have to use them. A lot of people carry their own ropes, but it's just a nice little touch if someone's able to tie down, even if they're staying for a few hours on a windy day. Um, Keeping your fuel area stocked with supplies. I don't know what airport this is. I stole this one off the internet, but what I really like about this photo is that you can see they have a few extra pairs of chocks on the left side. They do have a ladder as well. Granted, if you have a high wing airplane, it's a lot easier to use a ladder on wheels than it is to use a ladder that you would use to climb to the roof of your house and get that set up, especially in wind. Um, we have huge instructions on the fuel pump. Half of that fuel pump itself is just the instructions. I think I see some phone numbers listed on there. For those of you that use 100 low lead fuel pumps, we know that there's probably 100 low lead self-serve pumps in the state of Minnesota, and there's probably 100 different ways of how they operate. It seems like no system is quite the same as the next system. So clear instructions is very helpful. That's something I could really do better myself. And then a fire extinguisher is available too. That's one of those things where you hope you don't need it, but when you do need it, it's nice to have it handy. Moving on to local amenities. Here's just a photo from our home airport here in Alexandria with a business jet conducting some business in town in the banking industry. They had some rental cars that we got lined up for them there. I'd recommend establishing a relationship with your vendors, and this isn't anything crazy, but when there's an inquiry, whether it's someone makes a phone call to you, your airport, maybe to City Hall, or um, maybe someone just shows up at the airport and needs help. Do you have any relationships with hotels, rental cars in the area, reliable taxis? There might be a list of six that you hand someone for taxis, but which one's reliable? Which one can you confidently say these people are going to show up if you call them? Hotels, I've seen communities that offer pilot discounts. They recommend, hey, call Hotel XYZ. They offer a pilot discount. Rental cars. Are there any locals only knowledge that you could share? For example, I spent a weekend in a community in Illinois of about 15,000. No rental car agencies in that community. But I called the FBO, said, "Hey, I'm coming in for the weekend. I really like some, transportation if you have anything." And they said, "Oh yeah, our Toyota dealer does it all the time for people at the airport." I would have had no idea if I didn't make that phone call. So they helped, gave me a phone number. I called the local Toyota dealer, and they gave me one of their cars for the weekend to use as a rental around their community. Restaurants, discounts, coupons, deals, they're never expected, but it's a nice touch. The photo I have here is the Hangar 6 Cafe in Uvalde, Texas. Um, we landed there, dropped some folks off, and had to get fuel for our next spot. The line guy from the FBO came up with the fuel truck, said, "Hey, what do you guys need for fuel?" We gave him his order, and then in return, he gave us two coupons for free cheeseburgers at this restaurant on field. He said, "You guys go put your order in right now. By the time they're done cooking the burgers, I should be done with your fuel." So I went and placed an order for the burgers. He fueled us. We went to the FBO, paid our fuel bill. By that time, our burgers were done. We grabbed them, hit the road with the airplane, and on to our next leg, eating some burgers up at 41,000 feet. But what a nice touch. Was not expected. We were both hungry, and um, I probably couldn't point to Uvalde, Texas on a map if I tried to today, but I definitely remember the name of that airport, the name of that FBO, and that cafe just from their customer service when we arrived. Another one is unexpected maintenance. Not every airport has a maintenance shop in the field, and it's not reasonable to expect every airport in the state to have a maintenance shop. But if you don't have a maintenance shop on the field, I would recommend that you establish a relationship with a local shop. Um, Maybe there's an airport 25 miles away that has a shop, and just make the connection. Say, "Hey, I'm the airport manager, I'm the city administrator, etc. If we ever need a situation where we have a pilot with help, could you come and help them?" So that when that time comes, when somebody arrives at your airport and they get a flat tire, they have a dead battery, they have engine issues, um, you're able to provide them that contact. This is, "Hey, call this person. They're 25 miles away. I don't know what they're up to today, but they should be able to help at some point." Just making that contact is a huge help because there's not much that feels more defeating when you show up at an unfamiliar airport. It's locked up. There's nobody around for help, and there's no phone numbers or anyone to kind of lean a shoulder on when you need to. So, um, with the phone numbers, something else to consider. I'm sure we've all experienced it. You're staying at a hotel, you're getting a rental car. Who knows what the situation is? You make a phone call to what you think is a local number, and it goes to a national call center. Um, if there's an opportunity where there's a pilot, maybe they have an immediate need where they need to either check for hotel availability or cancel a reservation ASAP. Um, Maybe there's a hotel shuttle situation. They're trying to get to or from the hotel with the advertised shuttle. Do you have a local phone number that you can give to those people? We don't necessarily want to side skirt this business practice with their call centers, but again, in those immediate need situations, do you have a local number you could give to one of your visitors to help make sure that they're taken care of rather than getting frustrated sitting on the phone for 20 minutes? Marketing. Our final segment here, marketing. So I pulled two screenshots off of ForeFlight. For those of you that are not familiar, ForeFlight is one of the flight planning tools that pilots have been using for about 15 years now. In this day and age in 2026, I would say most pilots are using some type of technology to plan their flights. So on the left, I have New Richmond, Wisconsin. I clicked on New Richmond, I clicked on FBO, the FBO tab, and this is what came up. On the flip side, I went to Belleville, Missouri, which is again a Class Delta airport. Looks pretty similar in size to St. Cloud to me, just to give you a perspective. Clicked on their FBO, and there's next to no info. I have no idea what live takeoff is. There's no fuel price listed. I don't know what that is. It could be a media company for all I do that videos live takeoffs. Which airport is more appealing? Which one do you think you'd use as a fuel stop? So it's something to think about. Again, ForeFlight and Garmin Pilot seem to be king. As an airport, you can create free FBO accounts and go in and add all this information. So when people are choosing their fuel stop, they can click on FBO and see all the the amenities offered at your airport. We can't all have the lowest fuel price in the state of Minnesota, so we have to find other ways to make our airport stand out and make it appealing to people that are traveling through our state. And this is a fantastic way to do it, is not only putting your info in on ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot, but then monitoring it as well. People can leave public comments, so just monitoring those public comments, seeing if, what can you do better? Is there any issues that people are having at your airport that you maybe otherwise had no idea because you hadn't been referencing it? On the topic of social media, things to consider. Do you have some type of an online presence? Maybe it doesn't make sense to have your airport have its own website, but is there a portion of your city's website carved out with information for the airport? Your location of the airport, tenants at your airport, their contact information. This would be a great place to have that after hours contact. We talked about if someone needs help. Um, but again, having some form of an online presence. And then the big thing is, oh, what I should add, social media is a bonus. And I will tell you from experience that the general public is fascinated with airplanes. Even the most basic operations we see, fueling an airplane, mowing the grass of an airport, marshaling an airplane as they're coming in the park. Some of those little clips or videos just wow the general public. So, sometimes just posting the littlest stuff can leave the biggest impressions in your community. And as we've discussed it reminds your community that the airport's there. And kind of the theme for the rest of this presentation is get engaged with your community. If we're going to be honest with all of us, a minority of our community uses the airport, especially if we do not have commercial service. But that does not mean that everyone in the community should not be aware of the airport and its benefits. And that's a goal I think we should all strive for, is we know not everybody has a realistic use of the airport, but we think everyone in town should be aware of the airport and feel like they're, invited out there and see the value of it. So getting involved, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, attending Chamber of Commerce functions as a representative of your airport, maybe there's an opportunity to host a chamber function. I know a lot of communities will do like after hours kind of social setting, or maybe an early bird social setting where you go to and tour a different business and have hors d'oeuvres and some donuts and coffee and whatnot, and that business gets a or opportunity to present about what they do. Hosting at an airport usually is a pretty successful draw from my experience because it gives people a reason to go out there. Otherwise, people never come out to the airport. They don't have that reason to. Tour groups, professional tour groups, whether you have, maybe there's some, again, the Chamber of Commerce has some professional tour group in town that they do. Your tourism bureau, schools are a huge one. Daycares, we've done plenty of daycares at our airport before. Um, Parades, Minnesotans love parades. If you want a quick story on this one, I went on a date with a girl from the Twin Cities area. She moved to Alexandria. And I said, what's something about Alexandria, outstate Minnesota, that surprised you? And she said, I can't believe the amount of parades that you guys do in outstate Minnesota. I never would have thought about that, but it's true. We have all sorts of parades in my community, and I'm sure you guys can relate. Get the airport involved. Maybe bring a snowplow out. Maybe bring your airport courtesy car if you have a good label or wrap on it. Again, it gives people a reason to remember, like, hey, yeah, the airport is part of the community, and hopefully they can see the benefit of it. We've done airplanes themselves. If you have maybe a tenant that can fold the wings on their airplane, like a little kit fox, maybe they're willing to bring their airplane out to a parade or like a community night out that typically the police departments host in August. Big vehicle day. A lot of communities have a big vehicle day where they show off the fire department, police department. Um, Maybe the big boom trucks that your local utility company has. If you ask, oftentimes you're more than welcome to join. Airports are unfortunately just kind of the forgotten department of town in some places, and we have to fend for ourselves a little bit. And then a big thing is just hosting events at your airport. I'm a firm believer that every airport should host one type of public event per year. We all know that fly-ins are the most common one, and a point that got brought up to me is, what is a fly-in? We're so used to hearing that phrase from our industry perspective, but to the public, maybe you market it more as an open house. We know it's a fly-in. You can let the flying public know of it being a fly-in, but think about how the public perceives some of the events you're promoting at the airport. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? We want it to be an open house. We want to give the community a reason to come to the airport, see its value, maybe excite themselves, maybe excite them children about what goes on there. And if you don't have the capacity to host a fly-in yourself, maybe there's an EA chapter on your field. Maybe there's another local pilot group that could help. Even any other local organization that needs a fundraiser. Maybe your swimming team, maybe your tennis team, maybe the Lions Club. If there's any type of local organization that wants to do a fundraiser, there's really four ingredients you need for a fly-in. As long as you have food, you have a place to sit and eat the food, a hangar to sit and eat the food in if it's not the greatest day, and publicity. You do those four things, you're going to have people show up. You're going to have a good event, a good fundraiser for whatever organization wants to help put it on. Um, we're actually going to talk a bit more about that at the conference coming up here in a few weeks about hosting an airport event. Um, Other thoughts, to kind of leave you with that I've seen community movie nights, projecting movies on the side of a hangar, concerts at airports. Those are both great ways to engage pilots as well. Get creative, as a community asset. Think a little bit outside of the box of what can we do to get the community out here, and get them engaged and see the value of the airport so that, there's just good buy-in for the airport. With that being said, I believe that's what I have for the presentation. So I'll use your help here if I can, Natalie, but I guess we can open it up to questions if there are any.
Sounds great. Thanks for that amazing presentation, Craig. That had so much great information for everybody here. We got a couple comments in the chat right now. Samuel Walsh says, Bemidji Airport has a local barbecue sauce. I think relating to what you were sharing about having that local touch or local flavor at your AD building. Let's see here.
I'm gonna fly up and get that now.
Nice,
I love
perfect.
barbecue, Sam.
And then let's see here. Rob says, thank you. Don't forget Roar's Bakery. Um, and stop in and get a bear claw. All right. Let's see. Scott Turn, have you ever put a QR code in the FBO to get feedback from users on what they want to see in the facility?
That's a really great one. I have not thought about that. Oftentimes I will ask our local pilots what they see on the road, and I encourage them as they see things on the road to bring it back to me, send me photos, email them, text them, so that we can, try it as well. But that's another great way to get that feedback.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Let's see. I thought there was a hand raised. Maybe we'll put it in the chat.
Rob, I almost stopped at Roar's Bakery this morning, but I didn't want to be late for Natalie, so I might have to go there afterwards.
Let's see here from Thomas. Morris Airport is building a new 80 building. Is there anything you would make sure to include in a new construction if you had the opportunity?
Ooh, we should probably talk about that sometime, Thomas. I'm sure I could share some ideas with you. Um, I think my big thing is just making it feel homey. That when people have to spend several hours there, whether it's pilots waiting for their passengers to come back from a business meeting, or maybe it's passengers that are delayed because their airplane can't get in because it's raining or snowing, is it a comfortable spot to sit and hang out for a few hours? A pilot lounge is nice. TVs. Think of the modern day amenities, having plenty of plugins, good Wi-Fi. Um, yeah, we should talk about that more. We're not too far away from each other.
Great question. Thank you, Thomas. We've got about 1 minute left here. Any other last minute thoughts or questions? All right. Well, I am not seeing any coming in. Thanks again, Craig. We're looking forward to your sessions at the upcoming airports conference and hope to see everyone there.
Thank you. Have a good Tuesday, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.